Welcome back to another episode of the Wealthy Podcast. I'm your host, Shauna Nyrose, and today we are talking about a subject that impacts a lot of people. We've talked about ADHD in kids on the podcast before, but today we are talking about ADHD in adults. So, whether you know you are someone that has ADHD, maybe you think you might have ADHD, or whether you live with someone or love someone who has ADHD as an adult, you're going to want to listen up. This is the podcast for you. As I've shared before, I am the proud mama of two now almost adult children who have ADHD. Though it manifests very differently for each of them, nonetheless, knowledge has definitely been power. One of the things my husband and I learned along the journey was that their ADHD likely came from one of us. My husband is a high-performing realtor and business owner whose mind and body is always in motion until they're not. And then he's asleep. Both of us were like, yes, that explains a lot, but that didn't mean we knew what to do about it, both for him as the person with ADHD and me, the person living with the person with ADHD. Which is why I'm really excited about today's conversation. We've talked about ADHD on the podcast before with Dr. Frank and focused mostly on children. Today's conversation, adult ADHD, is equally important. They say stats don't lie, but in my expert opinion, this is a case where they actually might. In Canada, the estimate, according to the Centre for ADHD Awareness, is that 4 to 6% of adults live with ADHD. But I think we all know that it is much higher than that. To be sure, the vast majority are undiagnosed, often not recognizing symptoms until they're overwhelmed in work, relationships, parenting, or during a major life transition, or perimenopause, or they have a kid with ADHD. Research is also showing that women are diagnosed up to 3 times less often than men, and typically 10 to 20 years later. And that brings me to today's guest, Irene Spelliscy, who I haven't seen in person for years, but has been a very important person in my family's journey with ADHD. She was the original clinician that worked with my daughter, Jade, who I've shared lots about on this podcast. She is a registered psychologist whose work focuses on adult ADHD, trauma, and relationships. Irene has spent years helping adults understand the patterns, challenges, and strengths that come with having ADHD as an adult. She brings a depth of clinical expertise, but also a compassionate, practical lens to how ADHD shows up in real life, in partnerships, communication, parenting, work, and our relationships with ourselves. It's a long-winded intro, and Irene has tons to say. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I feel like I just read part of my obituary. The good part.
The good part. Yeah. I'm so happy to have you. You are just a natural communicator and a talker. I love your energy. We like to start at the beginning. So maybe you can share with our listeners, how did you get here? Where did you come from? And why have you sort of chosen to walk this particular path and this specialty?
Yeah, I love that question. And I was looking at your questions yesterday. I'm like, okay, how much am I going to share? I'll just see what comes out. But in terms of like choosing this as a career, I think I was really drawn to a few different areas of the helping professions. I was inspired to become a teacher or a police officer. And I found psychologists landed right in the middle. It gave me aspects of both things. As the youngest of 12, I was used to kind of being talked down to and not really listened to. And I remember being a child and thinking, I'm never going to do that to kids. And so teaching was a draw for me. My oldest sister was a teacher as well. And then the police officer side was like a strange fascination with things like serial killers, people I couldn't understand. And I had a real drive to understand why people did the things that they did. So that's sort of the intellectual side of it. Also, from a personal side, I had lots of trauma in my youth. 2 sudden deaths in my family, just a year and a half apart, not related to each other at all. So I was 10 and 11 and a half. I had 2 brothers pass away. And it was one of those moments where I was like, oh, there's no rules. Anything can happen. And it created this extreme level of comfort talking about difficult topics from a very young formative age. I knew I was different from other kids in the sense that I saw behind a curtain that a lot of people don't until they do. So that desire to listen to people, it started out working with kids and young offenders and street youth and high-risk youth. And then it morphed into working with trauma, because when you run a clinical practice, the people who pay the bills and are most likely to proceed with any suggestions you make are adults. So I went from working with youth to adults, but I still dip my toe in both ponds all the time. So, yeah.
You mentioned that you come from a large family, and was there and you are a clinician, like you certainly, work directly on the front lines of healthcare, mental health care, emotional healthcare. Was there a person in your life that sort of inspired you, or is there, I know that there's some other members of your family that work in healthcare. Is that a theme in your family, or is it? No.
I'm probably the I can't use the right word, but I'm the disruptor.
Right. Okay.
I like to talk about hard things, which leads my family to go, why are you talking about that quite a lot? So it's maybe a little bit of an oppositional nature. My cousin,
we call it curious.
Thank you. I actually use that term a lot as well. I
Yeah.
appreciate curious people because it's not always with a malintent, right?
Yeah.
I have 2 cousins who are psychologists, both of whom are just like these lovely, open-hearted human beings, and so have given me a lot of directives in my career. But probably my brother Pat, who was the one who passed away when I was 10, has had the greatest influence on me. He was an intellect. He was curious about lots of things. He was open-minded and just a little beyond his years. And he was strange in a really beautiful way. And I think he was probably the person that sparked my desire to understand lots of, whether it's the arts, whether it's international politics, whether it's individuals. I just have that curiosity that he sort of instilled in me. It was a very special relationship. So
that's amazing. And what an opportunity for you to extend his legacy by remaining curious and continuing to ask the questions and try to understand why. As a fellow curious person, I do understand that sometimes it comes across as why you just keep asking so many questions, but you just can't help it.
You want to understand. You want to be a part of the interaction. You
want to understand. As I mentioned before, we have done a previous episode on ADHD, and it focused primarily on children. But from your perspective as a psychologist and a clinician, what changes when we start talking about ADHD from an adult perspective?
In terms of assessment, there's obviously, you've got a longer history to take in. And there's a lot of different factors. I mean, people will say, doesn't everybody have ADHD? And we all do have aspects, like a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, we say. We all do have aspects of every disorder. It's the amount of those symptoms and the impact it has on your functioning. So when we talk about adults, I mean, one of the reasons I sort of stumbled into focusing on it was the number of women I was working with who had been diagnosed with anxiety and depression, and none of the interventions were successful. They just kept looping and looping. And when we backed it up and got more of their history, you started to understand how much they were masking over the years and how exhausting it was and how full of shame they were. And so anxiety and depression can go hand in hand with ADHD, but if, like any injury, like any illness, like any challenge, if you don't look at what's underneath it and causing it, you might suppress some symptoms for a while, but you don't actually get at the problem. So for adults, it's undoing patterns that become facts to them. and they aren't. It's something they might repeat to themselves. I'm lazy. I'm not interested. I can't do these things. I have to lie to people. Whatever those things are, I can't let anybody know. It's exhausting. And so they hit a wall eventually. And that's usually when they're motivated to explore what else might be there, right?
Yeah, and I do, just because I have, again, it's totally anecdotal, but like my husband is ADHD. Now we've figured this out because of the kids. And one of my bestie friends is ADHD.
They're awesome.
Yeah, it's like so awesome.
Yeah.
But I do understand what you're saying. It sometimes must be exhausting. You know, the speed at which they are operating, and also
or the inertia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like you said, I've noticed like almost like a hyper, and we can get into sort of how it manifests, but some hypervigilance around certain things. Like my husband like cannot, like is like compulsively like, I cannot be late. Right. Because like, and now we know this from having a child that is ADHD, that is something that he had to really learn. Yep. Because there's like this time dysmorphia thing with my daughter.
Time blindness, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Where like we know where this is heading, and you are going to be late, but it doesn't dawn on her until like there's this like impending sense of urgency. Yeah. And so now there's a coping mechanism in place that creates this hypervigilance. Yeah. And it's because they're afraid.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of shame in being a professional who's late to things all the time.
Totally.
So that's some of the masking, right? Some people will become, as you said, hypervigilant or rigid about the routines they have in place. I have some clients who talk about, no, I'm very organized. And I'll be like, describe it to me. So they'll have a bowl for their keys, their wallet, everything is in one place. They've learned that if they don't do that, it is lost. If anybody moves anything out of that bowl or moves the bowl, even to a few inches, like now you've messed with a system, and I have to use a unit of energy to figure that out.
Destabilizing.
It is, because it legitimately takes away from one of the interventions, which is creating some structure and routine so you can use your bandwidth for unpredictable needs throughout the day. So that's why those structures that are put in place as coping skills are so important. But it lacks that flexibility to, be okay with a bowl being moved or being a little bit late. And it's sort of going to the end of the sentence of like, well, what happens if you're late? Yeah. And so, I mean, that's where we get into complex things. Like, what's the story you were told when you were young? Were you shamed for it? Did people get angry? And so it's about the fear of what people will think of me. And it's very difficult to regulate once you go down that path. But that's where cognitive behavior therapy comes in, and you can start to explore, okay, as a result of this habit of believing something, now you've got an emotional response. So undoing the habit means going all the way down to the end of that thought and then fixing it so that you can correct it in the moment.
Totally. I also do even just think having these conversations where we can just share openly what the manifestation of these symptoms and these coping mechanisms looks like. As the partner of somebody with ADHD, I can be much more empathetic when my husband is like rushing me to get out the door by a certain time so we're not late to meet like his brother.
Oh, this is a different episode. If we're going to talk about your brother-in-law. Does he listen to this podcast? We'll find out.
Yeah, no, but
don't let him.
I love his brother. Like not in like.
But I know what you're saying. You're saying it's not like this like it's high risk
they'll be
event.
Okay.
Yeah,
like,
they'll be fine.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But then I can have more empathy for that situation. Okay.
I feel like I'm going to do an analysis, but like, has he ever talked about why being late bothers him?
Well, to be really honest,
it's just like a value. He's like, I just need to.
Yeah. We've never really actually sat down and deconstructed it.
Yeah.
And it's also as he's gotten older, it's gotten more
intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
that's common too.
Right. And also, again, not understanding that you can be ADHD and hyper fixated on certain, like, I don't want to say OCD because I know that's another pathology, but but it plays into it. You're not wrong.
Yeah. That rigidity about certain
Like,
routines.
it has to be a certain
Yeah.
way. And if that gets disrupted, it's super destabilizing.
Yeah. There's this concept for people who have ADHD about spoons. Have you heard this before?
No.
So there's a certain number of spoons of energy. So throughout the day, they maybe have 6 spoons. For some people, taking a shower and having breakfast, that's 2 spoons. Now they got 4 for the rest of the day. If they have to think about getting there on time, dealing with somebody being disappointed or upset, trying to catch up the rest of the day, those will be more spoons. So by the end of the day, they've got nothing. They can't listen. They can't engage. They can't emotionally respond. They can't initiate. They can't complete tasks. So it's kind of knowing your units of energy and where you're going to spend them. So for people who create those kinds of intervention strategies, those sort of structures so that they can cope, it's to free up spoons.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons it becomes important for people to, I mean, again, it's a support strategy to have that structure and routine, whether it's, I need to leave 20 minutes before because I know it often takes me 10 more minutes than I think it's going to take, and I don't like the repercussions.
Yeah.
And then you have other people who are chronically late and they'll always have great excuses, especially if they're high functioning, right? There'll always be something behind that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's people who are, not ADHD, and they'll be like, sometimes they're late, sometimes they're on time, but there's no rigidity to it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a flexibility to it. So that's the difference. I don't want people who are listening to this going, I hate being late. Maybe I have it. Like, okay, this is where a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. So I love anecdotes and then exploring them so that we can understand sort of the clinical impact of that.
So let's go there,
Okay.
because you do have some expertise, not just anecdotally and clinically, but this is like an area of specialty for you.
Mm-hmm.
So we're familiar with sort of what it can look like in children. We are talking about how it can manifest for adults. What technically is ADHD?
Well, technically, if we go to our lovely DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, there's 3 subtypes of ADHD. So there's the inattentive subtype, there's the hyperactive/impulsive subtype, and then there's the combined subtype. So that's, sometimes you'll hear it referred to as ADD or ADHD. It's because some people are like, well, I don't have the hyperactive. It is technically just called ADHD.
Right.
H is an option.
Right.
So in terms of the specific symptoms underneath each of them, they kind of are self-explanatory. Inattentive ADHD, difficulty paying attention, focus, concentration, processing, word finding, things like that. I don't have the list in front of me, and I'm already like, oh, I need the actual list to be accurate.
Like the butterfly chasers.
We can put it in the show notes. Do you put things in show notes?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, we can create that today. Anyway. And then hyperactive impulsive would be people who blurt, talk over top of other people, make impulsive decisions. They talk about like having running on a battery all the time.
Like a motor.
A motor, thank you. Perimenopause. I knew the word was right there.
I've got
and
you.
Yet, the humility that perimenopause has given me for word finding, because I'm usually quite a wordsmith. Thank you. So they have a motor running in them, and that's consistent since youth. So you might see hyperactive behaviors when they're younger, and people talk about growing out of it. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
It turns into impulsive behaviors in different ways. And so when we talk about the symptomology, it's not just the symptoms, it's the degree to which those symptoms impact functioning. Mm-hmm. Because again, everybody has a bit of this, depending on stress levels, hormone levels, things going on, sleep issues, health issues. We can all have a touch of the D's, as my friend calls it. But to actually have a diagnosis, it has to be consistent throughout your life. And it has to have an impact on functioning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like a negative, I'm just going to say like a negative impact. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Because there is, I am not always a silver linings kind of person. I'm more like reality based, but there are some benefits.
I was just going to say, like, and to a certain degree, I'm envious of my family members because it's a bit of a superpower for them.
Yeah. I think sometimes people with ADHD sort of hate the pressure of that superpower label.
I know.
Sometimes they're like, this is really hard and now I have to keep it up because you think it's a superpower.
Yeah.
But the truth is, people with ADHD become experts in their fields. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of police officers. They can tolerate high levels of stress because they aren't paying attention to it. So they can withstand a lot of trauma and exposure to things. They are more clear in high stress situations.
Yeah.
Emergency room physicians. People who study, whether it's in chemistry or engineering, you'll see high rates of ADHD because they can focus on one single thing. research is not that interesting. But if you really like it and you can hyper focus, you become an expert in that area. And that is useful. I mean, just from a historical perspective, the ability to notice patterns, very important. The ability to tolerate stress and push through. Those are things that actually serve, like creative people who are dopamine seekers, people who are emotional and write poetry and any kind of art. It's not that everybody who has that creative streak has ADHD. I'm just saying those are aspects of it where it has a bonus. But in terms of it impacting functioning, I think one of the reasons we see an uptick in people in this culture, in this society, is we're not really built for that to lead to successful outcomes. You have an app on your phone where you have to keep track of your bills and 70 people who you think are your close friends on Facebook or Instagram. You're responding to them. And then there's the meme culture of pebbling. And like, there's a lot going on that is competing for your dopamine and attention. It is very difficult to not have it impact your functioning in this culture. So creating strategies and interventions, they're kind of antithetical to how our society kind of runs. So that's, I think, part of the reason we see an uptick.
Well, and to your point as well, the technology, and I get, I was thinking of your spoon analogy, and like both my husband and my daughter will, like, they go, like, they're just like they are going like nonstop, right? And can be super effective, as you said, especially if they're like doing the stuff that they love.
Right.
Like Darcy's a realtor. He actually loves realtoring, like he loves it. Like it's just his passion. So he can do it all day long. But it takes a lot of energy to maintain that.
Yeah. To the detriment of other things
that
are necessary or important. That's the dysfunctional or disordering part is what impact is it having on your ability to eat regularly, go to bed, engage in conversation, be emotionally attentive, those kinds of things.
Go to the bathroom.
Like, that seems like such a basic thing. But for people who are inattentive to their body signals, they won't notice when they're hungry, when they're tired, when they're injured, when they have to go to the bathroom, and then there's urgency. You have a young kid with that can lead to things like accidents. It can lead to constipation, which, I mean, there's more and more research about your gut biome and how that impacts your mood.
And your mental health.
100%. It's not just a woo-woo science thing. It's an actual science thing. The rest of our bodies actually has an impact on our brain. So shocker, like this just in, spoiler alert. It's important to know that the inability to pay attention to those symptoms will have some long-term consequences to both mood and physical health.
It's like a cycle.
Yeah.
And then again, the tank is empty, or the spoons, you're done with the spoons. And now we live in this world where, like, you can have this like artificial, like, you pick up the phone and you can just like gap out on the phone, like for as long as you want. And it's like, somebody explained it to me. It's like, you just get to like rest back, like, and focus on that one thing, and it's super easy, and you just,
that's a really pleasant way of describing it. I don't know that that's exactly how I describe how it works.
Well, like the tech, like the I feel like it's not reserved just for people with ADHD, this phone addiction or doom scrolling or whatever. I think it's everybody, because that's the way that it's been designed.
Oh, yeah.
But certainly maybe, and explain it to us, for an adult with ADHD, why is it so compelling?
Well, it's, as you described, it's designed to grab our attention. The colors, the feedback loop. I mean, one of the most difficult patterns to stop is intermittent reinforcement. So if you're scrolling on Instagram and you look at 40 stories and 3 of them are interesting or have a funny meme, it's going to keep you scrolling more than if everything's interesting.
It's by design. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like it's designed by slot machine technicians. They need you to stay active with it for it to be relevant. So that is just naturally how our brains work. We're looking for intermittent reinforcement because we never know when we're going to hit the prize. It's so exciting. So even for somebody who has a lot of self-regulation and self-control, it can become something that you rely on. I think about how 10 years ago, I didn't walk around my house with my phone in my hand.
No.
But now everyone in my household does. I don't know. They always know where it is. And if they don't, they worry.
It's panic time.
Yeah. I would love to have a landline again.
Mm-hmm.
That is that's my retirement goal.
It's
a landline and no social media.
And to the point
it's
where
relaxing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just noticing, like, when you go out and you just like, you have to put everything in you have your keys and your like lipstick and, a notepad and whatever else you need to put in your bag, but you leave your phone in your hand.
Yeah.
Because like, oh my gosh, just the tension of having to get it out of your bag if you need it in a moment.
Yeah. I had a friend who had a BlackBerry back when they were really popular, and she had to use it for a government job. And she had it in her hand so often that when we'd go out, she said, it's like I have a phantom limb. I constantly am like, where is it? But phones
we
weren't
all
as
feel
big.
like that now.
Yeah. It very much, it's a great experiment to just see where your own nervous system is, to leave it. Go for a walk without it. Go and run errands without it, to see how reliant you are. Because as much as it's a useful device, we're walking around with this computer in our pocket. And though we might just go to check something, we end up looking at 6 or 7 things because they draw our attention.
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of different interventions out there, especially for people with ADHD. There's like a timed lockbox you can buy. It's like $80. It's ridiculous, but it works because you can't get it out until the timer goes.
Yeah.
So you're forced to be without it. That's not just plugging it in and hoping you'll leave it on the station, because you will go back and check it. It's a muscle memory thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's lots of research. Sleeping with your phone outside of your bedroom actually leads to better quality sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So we can get into all of these other factors. Like, it's not just, phone doesn't create ADHD. It's just that we have the ability to make it harder to learn how to self-regulate, be bored, wait for things. And that doesn't lend itself well to self-regulation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's certainly been a challenge, I think, even for everybody, to figure out what that relationship looks like.
I know.
Because it does. You can kind of just get lost.
Mm-hmm.
I want to circle back and ask you, a lot of, like, you mentioned sort of like the coping mechanisms, the fact that many people will get to adulthood having ADHD, but not necessarily recognizing it. Or it's brought on by, or like it's heightened by life circumstances. But like, what happens when ADHD goes undiagnosed or untreated? You mentioned it can manifest as anxiety and depression. Are there other things that, if we're not recognizing that this is something that is happening for us, that pop up?
Yeah. Again, part of my work is doing interventions and assessment for post-traumatic stress disorder. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I found in the research, as well as in my office, is that people with untreated, undiagnosed ADHD have a higher incidence of post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's not because they deserve it. It's more that because they delay processing, they are inattentive to body symptoms, which gives them the ability to do lots of the things they enjoy. They don't always notice that they're traumatized, or they don't always notice. They can shove it down, and they have an aversion to discomfort. So they will quickly move away from it. They will do whatever it takes. So long term, that doesn't work with trauma. And we kind of, before the podcast, we're talking about capital T trauma. It's stored differently in our brain and in our body. So a threat to bodily integrity is sort of the basic definition of that. So somebody who doesn't pay attention to how exposure to that has impacted them, because they don't stay in discomfort very long, they'll avoid it. So the combination of impulse control issues, they'll drink, they'll shop, they'll clean, and then they don't have to be alone with their thoughts about what they were exposed to. So that's one impact.
They play squash and basketball and
yeah, I mean, and those are healthy coping mechanisms.
Totally. But again, when you
processing
just
trauma is different. Mm-hmm. It's in a different category. This isn't about dealing with stress in a relationship or disappointment in, your job, or that's different. Trauma is its own animal. So if that's not processed properly in the right amount of time, it turns into post-traumatic stress disorder. So all of those symptoms are so unpleasant in the beginning, lots of people will avoid them. There's different reasons people develop it, but it then becomes difficult to administer treatment because they have to stay in the processing over a long period of time in order to process it, which nobody likes to do. Nobody wants to be uncomfortable. We have two drives. One is to avoid threats and anxiety, and the other is to seek pleasure. So I often talk about you're going to run away from the bear before you eat the cake, right? We have to be regulated before we can do things that are good for us. So if they feel dysregulated, one of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder is avoidance. Now, if they're really good at avoiding because they have avoided things that are uncomfortable, things that are hard by doing things they're good at, it's a natural feeling of coping. But the long-term impact is not only from a mental health perspective, but physically. The symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder can include like panic and anxiety, sleep disruption, irritability and anger, which they will take out on the people closest to them. So it becomes pretty dire by the time people want to get a handle on it. There's a lot of things to adjust. So that's one really sort of relevant from my practical perspective and clinical perspective. For others,
and is it a chicken and egg thing? Like somebody experiencing, let's say, capital T trauma, motor vehicle accident, or the death of a loved one, that is really like for some
sudden,
reason it hits harder, right? Let's say the death of a loved one. Is that the moment where it's like I can't get out of this grief? Like I'm stuck in this PTSD cycle, and then when you're peeling back the layers, you realize, oh, there's an untreated ADHD here.
I don't know if there's, so what I would say with post-traumatic stress disorder is that what I've seen with clients is they're unable to do the work even though they want to. And that their ability to avoid is just so much stronger because of the ADHD practice, right? And masking throughout their life. So it's not that people with ADHD, although, I mean, some people with ADHD engage in higher risk behaviors, so they may be exposed to trauma. Some of them love to be police officers or ER physicians, so they may be chronically exposed to it. But in terms of it impacting them and sitting with them, it's not necessarily just what happened, but what they tell themselves about why it happened. So unpeeling those layers means sitting in self-reflection and discomfort, which traditionally, if you have ADHD, you have developed strategies to not do that and still appear to function. So it sneaks up on people. And so in my practice, I'll see we're chugging along doing trauma work, and then I'll be like, you're having a lot of trouble following through on this. What's happening? Because they're so used to masking. You can't mask recovering from trauma. I mean, some people try, but they'll be like, yeah, I feel so much better. I'm like, no, you don't.
Right. Because it's in your cellular sort of.
Well, and it's in their behavior.
Yeah.
You know, you don't just recover from PTSD. It takes work and awareness. So sitting in that awareness is where the discomfort is. But to go back to your question, I don't know that the ADHD is there, but having said that, trauma in early childhood can create those mechanisms in your cognitive functioning that lead to symptoms of ADHD. So it can be something genetically predisposed, or you can impact a child's development to the point that their brain chemistry is different. And there's lots, now we're going to get into the weeds, but there's lots of research about the importance of those first 4 years of development. Eye contact, nurturing, consistency, safety, trust, all those hierarchy of needs things. But so you can actually induce that if there's early trauma. And then you're like, well, which came first? Doesn't matter.
Like you can induce the ADHD symptoms.
Yeah. And so there's that physiological, environmental cause to it, right? And then it doesn't really matter because there's a lot of overlap between, say, post-concussive syndrome, early trauma, and ADHD. They'll present very similarly. They're treated similarly too. So it doesn't really matter if we separate them all. Yeah.
All things considered, at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily matter because if it's impacting your life in a negative way and causing some downstream impacts, then it's something that you would want to at least have knowledge around and ideally build in healthy coping strategies.
I often say mental health isn't very sexy.
Yeah.
Because it's very similar interventions and strategies for a lot of these challenges. So how are you sleeping? And are you eating well? And do you drink enough water? And do you have a social circle? Do you have ways of self-regulating? Like, it's not sexy stuff.
Right.
Trauma work's a little sexier, but I mean, in a painful way. I mean, people
Right.
think I'm a bit of a sadist because I'll be like, I'm really excited to do this work. But it's also, once we uncover the ADHD, if we treat that, trauma work goes very quickly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it can prolong painful things.
Interestingly, I've never thought about the connection between sort of discomfort avoidance and kind of like this ADHD umbrella. But certainly now that you say, I would always say in a very like loving and compassionate way, an appreciative way sometimes, that my husband and my daughter are both characteristically emotionally uncomplicated.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you
and
mean.
like it's not, it's like when I say that, it might sound like I'm saying it like it's a bad thing, but it's actually not. Like they're so low drama. Do you know what I mean? They're very like water off a duck's back. Like, hey, it's chill. Like, you know, why are you dwelling on things? Like, stop ruminating. Like, you know, just. But at the same time, you talk about anxiety. It's there too, particularly for Jade. Like, it's something she's had to like learn how to deal with. But Net was so young that maybe not the connection between like the emotional discomfort and the anxiety were like walked hand in hand.
That's that inattentive ADHD that presents in a way that is difficult to diagnose. And so especially for girls, women and girls, that anxious piece and learning to mask it is, you know, the literature supports that that's actually why women and girls go undiagnosed, not because they have different symptoms, because they're more likely to internalize than externalize the same feeling. So untreated anxiety can vent as rage. So you may see somebody getting angry, and anger is a really understandable emotion. Everybody knows what they're supposed to do.
Uncomplicated.
To leave you alone. Yeah. It's not complicated. There's not a lot of
nuanced.
vulnerability. No. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the anxiety piece that you talk about, we're culturally assimilated, women are, to manage our anxiety. We can all talk about it. We can talk about the ups and downs and the nervousness and the pressures and then the rumination about, did I do that really well? The perfectionistic tendencies, the pressures. So there's some normalizing of the internalization. But once, I mean, I hear a lot when people start medication, they're like, is this what it's like for everybody?
Yeah.
And I'll be like, is it quiet? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, it is. You can find one thought and you can stay with it. And for people who have that anxious rumination, it's like they run into a noisy room every day and they're trying to find the one voice to listen to. And it's just so exhausting, right? So that anxiety that goes untreated, it can vent as rage or it can turn into depression. So now we're down the line a few symptoms. We're dealing with depression. We back it up. We find anxiety. We back that up. We find ADHD. It's the easiest of those to treat.
Yeah.
So I know people are often hesitant. And I heard your comment that, you know, in the beginning you were like, I don't know about this ADHD thing. People are hesitant to accept the diagnosis and try medication. But it's the easiest medication to try, to change, to increase, to decrease, to manage, to get on and off of. So much easier than anti-anxiety and antidepressants, like so much easier on your system too. So
yeah, and I've been a big proponent of because I lived it, was like, no, we're not going to do the medication. We're going to try with all sorts of strategies and what are we eating and how are we sleeping? And then at the end of the day, when all of that is still not necessarily addressing what the issue is, then and I do call it medicine because it is like medicine, and it can be life-changing. And I'm wondering, is it the same for adults? Like you just said, it's kind of like, I don't want to glorify medication, but in this particular case, you said some really important things there. It's easy to get on and it's easy to get off.
Yeah.
Are there so what are the upsides and what are the downsides of once you've gone through assessment and determine, and actually we can talk about what that looks like, determine that you do in fact have ADHD, you know, what's the benefit and what's the risk involved with medication?
Yeah. I'd love to circle back and talk about like the intricacies of assessment, because
Yes, please.
I think it's an important piece to then bridge into what medication can or can't do. It's not a magic bullet, but the assessment process, an appropriate, thorough assessment, because one of the things you had intimated to talk about was the difference between how a physician might assess it versus a psychologist. And those are really the only two places you can get that diagnosis, nurse practitioner as well. But a responsible, in-depth diagnosis, and a lot of great GPs will be like, I think you have it. I want you to go get assessed.
Yeah.
Let's really understand it. And that's because you want to understand all of the other mechanisms that might be contributing to these symptoms, and to speak to, your natural motivation to look at sleep and eating and, what other coping strategies. That is super important, because when you do an assessment, you should be asking about someone's medical history. Do they have sleep problems? What is their eating like? Because when you fix some of those, you sift out some of the symptoms.
Or the intensity of the symptoms.
Yeah. But sometimes you actually sift out the diagnosis. Like someone with a very severe wakefulness or sleep disorder will look like somebody who has ADHD. Can't pay attention, irritable, withdraws, can't get anywhere on time. And then what's causing the sleep disorder? Is it trauma? So then that's why when we start to address other things that are underneath, post-concussive syndrome, perimenopause, I'm actually ashamed that I haven't been screening women in my practice up until about 3 years ago for the impact of perimenopause. And it was only because I didn't realize it until I started to go through it, which, there's not a lot of literature on it. It's really in the last 3 to 5 years that it's become sexy. Let's just call it sexy so that we can live with it. But the idea that a thorough understanding of a person's history, academically, socially, professionally, romantically, all of those are critical factors in that diagnosis, because it will also speak to treatment, right? So some people will need help with managing relationships and communication strategies, self-esteem issues. So the full assessment, though, it might all come to the same place. Where you bridge off from there will be dictated by the information you gathered. The number of women that I've talked to whose physicians have never asked them about their period is shocking, because unless we bring it up, it's just not part of anything, right? It is shocking to me, because that hormonal piece is indicative of and connected to, there's research about the links between hormonal imbalances and symptoms of ADHD, low B12, high or low levels of ferritin, iron levels.
Say ferritin, yeah.
Yeah. Again, I came to this anecdotally. I'd be like, why, when I'm doing health history, do all of these women have low B12 and low iron? I got to do some research. And I'd look at it and I'm like, what? There is a connection between ADHD, these things, and autism, actually. So where on the spectrum is this hormonal stuff? Now, there's theory about it, because now we also see ADHD symptoms in women with perimenopause who never had them. And the treatment is the same. They can use stimulant medication for the brain fog and the word loss. But the story behind it is different. So where we're going to go from there, and the treatment is going to be different. Again, like we talked about before, the label isn't as important. So a thorough assessment gets all of that. And it takes a long time.
And it's
doctors don't have 2 hours.
No. And I would you do, when you say a thorough assessment, you're talking about obviously the psychosocial health history.
Yeah.
And then would you do a psychoed? So that was
these are great questions. I'm just so happy to nerd out about this. Okay. So I would do checklists.
The psychoed is the test that
so
kids get.
Well, I can do them on adults too.
But that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah. So a psychoeducational assessment looks at IQ and achievement so that we can see if there's challenges to learning and how the brain works. Now, that's generally the motivation to do a psychoed. We can do emotional behavioral screeners to see if those are also impacting learning, because that's a kid's full-time job. We want to know how they do at their job.
Yeah.
But for adults, when we can't fully get it from just checklists of self-report, I will sometimes do an IQ test, because within an IQ test, there's 2 areas of interest: working memory and processing speed. And when those are significantly, this is where stats, math is fun to me when it validates what you see experientially. And so with significantly lower scores there, it can sort of validate these symptoms we can't quite pinpoint and that the screeners aren't fully catching.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, an ADHD assessment for adults, for me, would be a 2-hour clinical interview, full historical background from them, and hopefully like a parent or somebody who's known them since they were young.
Like a partner, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, depending on how long they've known their partner. I will sometimes get the partner to do the ADHD checklist.
Yep.
Just to have some collaborative. It's not used for diagnosis, but sometimes inattentive ADHD, they have poor self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, oh yeah, I do that. But it didn't get captured on that. So you have a spouse going, you always forget where you put this. You never do. And then they're like, oh yeah, she does say that. But because they're inattentive, they're not even paying attention.
Yeah.
Because like you said, nonplussed, right? They're like, whatever,
Yeah.
water off a duck's back.
Yeah.
So that thorough assessment is different than a psychoed, where you're looking at educational functioning and you may capture the ADHD as a piece of it.
Yeah.
So it's important to distinguish between the function of the assessment. And some people don't need that thorough an assessment. They don't need a full report. They don't need an 8-page with recommendations. Some people do for university, or some people do just for their peace of mind. So you can have various levels of like depth with that.
The interesting.
Did I answer that question?
Yeah, you did.
Okay,
you did. And I think it's a great answer, because for me, the interesting thing again, about Jade's psychoed reports, which we've had to do a couple of times over the years, just because I don't know why we have to do it, but we do.
You got to update them.
You have to update them. And it's, again, for educational purposes for their IEPs and such. However, there is some really remarkable information in those reports that are very thorough about the way the brain works in this person.
Yeah.
You talked about like IQ, but there's other things like working memory and processing speed. And like there's very interesting data specific to that person.
Yeah.
For me with Jade, like she has some quirky things about her brain that just even me understanding that and eventually her understanding that, again, you go back to like, what's the superpower? Like sometimes people think, oh, the only marker is like IQ or whatever, but like processing speed or working memory or not, like pattern recognition or like there's so many things that are actually really awesome about this learning profile, right?
And IQ isn't correlated to ADHD at all.
Yeah.
Like it has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
So people who are extremely intelligent can mask their ADHD for a while. They'll get good marks because their teachers like them.
Yeah.
They can space out for 15 minutes and fill in the blanks because they're logical problem solvers.
They don't need to study yet.
Right. Yet. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Or they have to study 3 times more than other people because they're worried they're going to forget or they can't retain it. So they have to use this rote
vigilant
kind of, and then they go to university and you just can't put that much time in or you won't get through it. Or people who've never had to study go, what just happened? I can't just fill in the blanks. This is a different level of learning. So there's these rude awakenings that happen that how they've been able to mask doesn't work afterwards. So
let's say, it's super interesting. And I love, this is why, I talk about healthcare, and especially this kind of healthcare as an art and a science.
Yes.
Right?
I totally agree.
Yeah. Because it's like very person centered. It really is different based on the person that's sitting in front of you. However, there's things that we can learn and know. One of those things is that medicine for some people it's like I said, extremely effective. So tell me about what is the process for talking about taking a medication?
Yeah. And
what is the medication?
Well, there's stimulants and there's non-stimulants, right? Because not everybody reacts well to stimulants. And that thorough assessment piece is so important because you could have somebody who maybe has bipolar, where they have sleep disruption, they have hyperfixation and hyperactive. And so to distinguish that, because you don't want to give a stimulant to someone with bipolar disorder. So that's somebody I would refer on for a full psychiatric. So the nuanced training that a psychologist has to be able to recognize that as an outlier and make sure before we experiment
that it's not something else.
Yeah. And like you had described, treating someone with ADHD is a multi-pronged approach. Medicine is not a magic bullet. It does help get the ADHD out of the way so all the other strategies are easier because they do take up a lot of energy. So strategies like Working with a coach can give you some hacks and tips and tricks, shortcuts, so you use fewer spoons. Exercise, number one treatment, anxiety, depression, ADHD. The only thing that I know of scientifically that reduces the likelihood of dementia. So it is an important aspect. It isn't something to burn off energy, as some parents might discuss, or even adults who do it a lot. It actually is a stimulant. It gives you energy. It gives you focus. And so you don't need to use as many spoons. Yeah, you're doing the like, see, I said so. Exercise and having a good sleep routine. Again, super boring, but all of those things you talked about require some structure, some supports, learning how to self-regulate, having that self-reflection. And medication makes it easier. So a lot of people are hesitant. They're like, no, I don't want any medication. I'm going to like do all of these healthy things. And I'll be like, cool. And within 6 months, they're like, why is this still so hard? And I'm like, so here's the thing. Most stimulants have a 24-hour or a 48-hour half-life, meaning they're out of your system in 2 days, right? Or a 24-hour half-life. They're out of your system in 2 days. Easy to try, easy to get off of. There's not a lot of downsides to them. Some people might have dry mouth. Some people might have difficulty sleeping. Some people might have an appetite suppressant. So working through those symptoms, I often say, don't just work with your doctor, work with a pharmacist, because it's all they study.
Yeah.
They want to talk about the drugs. Like, they love it.
And they are really awesome as resources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even from a medication perspective, having somebody well-versed in protocols, there's actually somebody here at the hospital, Dr. Best, Katrina Best. She's fantastic with understanding the protocol associated with trying ADHD drugs and treating yourself like a bit of a science experiment and monitoring. Okay, I'm going to try this one for 2 weeks. Then I'm going to try this one for 2 weeks. Then I'm going to do this one for 2 weeks.
Interesting.
And you do a contrast and compare of those medications. And then you start to work with your doctor on dosages.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them have different mechanisms. So figuring out what the right one is for you. Now, again, that becomes a barrier sometimes because people are like, I don't want to be trying a whole bunch of meds. It's actually the most empowering thing to know that you can try them, because I think we are very familiar with antidepressants, and going on and off of them is so difficult.
Yeah.
It is not with these. And people are like, well, how will I know it's working? I'm like, you'll know right away. And if you don't, your spouse will.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had that experience. If you're like, I can tell.
Well documented.
Yeah. Totally. And again, with all three of them, their ADHD manifests in different ways, but we were told, you said it, you were the first person to say it to me. It's like putting on glasses for your brain. It literally.
Did I say that? That's great. I haven't used that in a while.
You said that like ages ago. It was like when we were first talking about Jade, and this was probably 11 years ago when she first got diagnosed. But because I was confused because it's like stimulant.
I know. Everybody thinks it's meth, right?
Yeah.
But it's like baby meth. It's like well-controlled meth.
Right.
But I'm giving it a bad rap. I don't think I'm doing any better right now. But yeah, you need, people are like, but they're hyperactive or they can't pay attention. What a stimulant?
It's a part of their brain that actually isn't active.
Yes, it's a lack of stimulant.
Yeah.
It's a lack of regulation. So what happens when the stimulant hits in is now, instead of like seeking something to be stimulated and then crashing, the way that coffee kind of acts in our system, is it actually gives this nice undulating wave. Like you on your best day when you've like worked out and you've got a great schedule ahead of you. It's that kind of like, I'm just going to pull all of this heavy lifting out of the way. And now you can function within this. You still have to have all those other strategies. Otherwise, the medication is really wasted. And so some people who rely on it, they're like, I'm not seeing, the impact I wanted. Or people who keep drinking coffee. Then they're like, I can't sleep. It's the meds. I'm like, how much coffee are you drinking? They're like, I don't drink coffee. I'm like, do you use pre-workout? And they're like, yes. Yeah. I'm like, that's 600 milligrams of caffeine you just took. Yeah. They're like, okay, I'll stop that. And then they're like, oh, you were right.
Yeah.
So realizing you're self-medicating with other stimulants is, an interesting conversation too.
Totally.
Yeah.
I loved what you were saying too about sometimes it just gives you that like hand up to be able to create some new structures and habits around staying focused and you know what I mean? Because like I know for like even my son Jack, who we were always told like, oh, you should get him tested for ADHD, because he was like that kid. He was like falling off his chair.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Just like.
Yeah, the lack of body awareness piece.
Yeah,
Yep.
totally.
Clumsiness, yeah.
And just busy all the time and interrupting and that. But high functioning academically. So I was like, it's not a problem. Whatever.
Right.
He's fine. Right. But now he's in university. All of a sudden, shit's getting real.
Yeah.
It's hard.
I love that you just said shit, because I was going to say it earlier.
Every once in a while,
can
I say it.
Is that going to get edited? I don't care. I'm just glad it happened.
Put like an explicit on it or something.
You'll get an R rating.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah, but he.
That's how you made it in the big time.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because like he gets to university, like you said, all of a sudden, shit gets real, and he actually was in a pharmaceutical class. He was taking a class on like pharmaceuticals for commonly diagnosed conditions.
Yeah.
And then they
Really
were doing the
specific
ADHD
class.
module.
Okay.
Yeah. And he said, "Oh my gosh, Mom, I think I have ADHD." I was like, "No, you don't." He's like, "No, I think I do."
Yeah.
So he went to his doctor. He had the assessment. He went on the medication. And we talk about it often because he's like, it's just been the thing I need to figure out how to like keep myself organized. So even when he doesn't take it, because like you said, you can go on and off of it.
Mm-hmm.
And my kids and Darcy will not take it on weekends or, like.
Oh, really?
Yep. Yeah. Or in the summer. But they've also developed now.
Can I comment on that in a minute? Go ahead.
Yes. These habits.
Right.
That they can cultivate, that when they're not taking the medicine are still in place.
Yeah.
So they know like, oh, I need to make a list for this.
Yeah.
Or like, if I want to be productive today, I have to get up at like 8:00, right?
Mm-hmm.
These habits
Yeah.
that they've trained into themselves persist even when they're not necessarily taking the medicine.
Yeah. And the medication helped them create those, almost like taking care of their future selves.
Yeah. They're like,
right?
oh, this is what it looks like
Yeah.
to be like this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I like this. It works.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those are those extra pieces of functioning that need to be in place because, medication isn't a cure-all. One of the things that, because a lot of people take medication for academics or like productivity, I often talk about it's actually to regulate your attention and focus, but it also regulates other things.
Yeah.
So your problem-solving processing, your emotions. So I see a benefit to people using it on weekends and holidays because that's when you spend all that intimate time with people you care about.
Yeah, and the relationship piece.
The relationship piece is more important than anything. When people bring their kids in and we do diagnosis and people are hesitant to try medication, they're like you said, they're doing okay in school. I don't want to medicate them. It'll change their personality. I just kind of wait. Like, I'm not going to push anybody into it. I get why that feels like a big deal. And honestly, 25 years ago, I would have told people don't put your kids on it. It wasn't well researched. It was researched on adults. Kids were over medicated and zombied out. And that's the narrative we have. It is not the landscape we have today for those medications. And the emotional upside of it, I think, is more important than the academic. When people feel happy, they're productive. It's just a natural consequence, right? But those personal relationships, they're just easier. They're happier. And it's not because their personality has changed. It's because their regulation has changed.
Yeah, and they're not doing so much work behind the scenes.
Yeah, there's got more spoons.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a spoon.
It's very interesting. I mean, I adore my husband. Everybody knows that because I talk about him a lot. But there are certain things about the ADHD characteristics that I'm like, you're killing me right now. So it's a really good point. I never really thought about that because he doesn't.
Because everyone who sees him on meds, he's doing work with.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. I know. I'm like, oh.
You could just do it like an experiment. Like, let's just try it for the weekend.
Yeah.
You can make it sound sexy.
Yeah.
Just see what happens.
He would. I think he would be fine with it.
And then you could talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah. I know. I should actually have him come one day. I talk about him so much. This has been awesome. As you projected, we didn't get to a lot of the stuff on the list, but I do think we had a great sort of holistic conversation about this really complex topic.
Yeah.
But I want to shift gears a little bit as we kind of close our conversation, at least for this episode. You've been working in this space for some time. And I want you to sort of think back to like young Irene and when you sort of first got into being a psychologist, and the Irene that is sitting here today. How would you say your definition of health and what constitutes health care has changed, or has it?
Well, yeah, when I saw this was one of your questions, I was like, I would say probably typically as a female, health was always measured in how you looked and your body size. And, if you were running long distances or it was all about physicality.
Yeah.
And that was evidence of health. And I think it's so different now that what I would define as health is the ability to have boundaries and healthy, fulfilling relationships. It sounds so corny as it's coming out of my mouth, but it's legitimately, there is a research out of Harvard that I just read about yesterday. And I was like, oh, it's such perfect timing, is that the quality of our relationships predicts long-term health outcomes. And the impact of that, because we don't carry the load alone, we process things going on. It's a greater predictor of health outcomes than whether you exercise or go to sleep. And those are big deals to our health anyway. We've got lots of research about direct correlations. But yeah, I'd say being able to end toxic relationships with confidence instead of guilt and regret, and to cultivate healthy ones. And knowing the difference is probably the biggest measurement of health. That and good cardio and stamina. That also has a good outcome in certain situations.
And lifting heavy things, as we hear over and over
sometimes
again.
you got to lift shit on your own.
Oh,
That's also a sign of health.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that. I once heard a stat, not that long ago actually, that the biggest predictor of happiness in one's life is who you choose as a life partner.
Yeah.
Like, makes sense.
Oh, and then again, a topic for another day.
It's not money. It's not like, I have a perfect body. Like all this. It's who you choose as a life partner.
We are in a society where we think independence is like the hallmark of success, but interdependence and community connection and who we spend time with is tantamount to good health. So, yeah.
Okay. So what areas of so we think we're very clever, the Wealthy Podcast, health is wealth. What areas of your life do you feel you're wealthy?
My friendships. Yeah, my relationships with my kids, although if they're listening to this, they may call in and it's not a call-in show, guys. Your opinion doesn't matter. That's how great our relationship is.
We're always listening here at the foundation. Arden will be happy to take your call.
Yeah, I would say the relationships that I have cultivated and made hard decisions about, that those are,
You are co-authoring a book as we speak about uncoupling.
Conscious uncoupling is Gwyneth and Chris made so popular.
Yeah. Divorce. And I can't wait to have you back to talk about that topic. But to your point about how important relationships are and, creating boundaries and understanding that is a part of your own healthcare.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to talk to you about that particular topic.
Talking about boundaries and relationships.
Well, and just how difficult and common, let's just say, it is to have to face these really destabilizing moments in your life where you have to make decisions about the person that you're with.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people would benefit from your expertise and your thoughts on how to do that in a way, particularly because you have this lens from a trauma counseling perspective. So I can't wait to have you back to talk about that.
I would love it.
Little teaser.
Yeah.
But to finish this podcast, I just want you to have the last word.
Oh,
adult ADHD. What do people need to hear most when it comes to this topic?
There is a great quote by Malcolm Gladwell that anybody who sits in my office will be like, oh yeah, she says that all the time. But it's, we do not accept the truth until there is no other truth to accept. That there is no timeline on when you decide to explore it as a possible factor. I've had people in their 60s and 70s come and get assessments and said it changed their life. That it starts to rewrite their story about why and how things happened through a lens that lifted a lot of shame and embarrassment and gave them permission to be authentic. So ADHD, it carries a stigma, but the more people that embrace it and find humor and peace in it, I think the easier it's getting for people to talk about it. And not everybody has it. But if you do, it's worth finding out because it can change the way you think about yourself. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you, Irene. This was like a really wonderful full circle moment for me. You were the first person that we ever talked to about this particular subject. Our family's kind of personal journey started with you, and
you're still talking to me.
I know it's been a very positive one. I'm happy to say, and it's just been really wonderful to have you here and chatting about this. So thank you.
Thank you for asking me. I appreciate that. It's nice to be on the other side of the story now. Yeah.